Yay, we're live. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Don't worry, that's not your volume. That's my voice. Hold on a second. Okay, full strength. Here we go. Welcome to my channel. My name is Margaret Pinard. You're on Booktube. I'm a historical fiction and fantasy author, and I skipped my video on Wednesday. So instead of a Wednesday wrap up, you're getting a Sunday sum up, to borrow Amy's phrase of her reviews of books. And I've got so many extra things to add into the book reviews today. It's going to be book thing, book thing, book thing. So I've got it all planned out. There will be no unexpected surprises today, of course. Not at all. No check, no forgetting, none of that. None of that. It's all rolling like I want it to today. So welcome. I'm very happy you're here. Good morning or good evening, wherever you are. And if you're new here, I read eclectic types of books. I read lots of nonfiction. I read lots of historical fiction. I read lots of romance and mystery and nature books. So hopefully you will like that selection and stick around for more fun to come. Yes, so today is a 6-book review Sunday, but you will see that I'm also going to sneak in a few extra books under the guise of something else. So, how we doing, everybody? Anita is here. A.F. Stewart, hello, friend. Jocelyn is here. Happy Sunday. Hello, Jocelyn. Wanda is here. Hi, hi, hi. Hello. And Jim is here. Hey, y'all. Hey, Jim. So, oh, Esther, YouTube sending me notification on time. Pour une fois. For once. Excellent. Glad to hear it. All right, so my first book I'm going to review is 5 stars. When I tweeted this Sunday session, I said 22 stars because when I added up the 6 books, it was 22 stars. So I thought that would attract some attention. Light rains sometimes fall. You may have heard me mention this before because as I've been reading it, I've loved it so much that I've shared different parts of it as I was sprinting and whatnot. It's by Lev Parikian. He is a British guy who's a conductor who took up bird watching. So let that sink in. And he's written like 5 books now, and they've won nature writing awards. And so that's fairly impressive. I really liked the premise of this when I saw it in a British bookstore back in February. So I ordered it from Blackwell's a few months ago. You will have seen it in the haul. And it's got this beautiful cover. It's called A British Year Through Japan's 72 Seasons, meaning we in the West have 4 seasons, but Japan has a tradition of dividing those up into smaller 5-day increments and calling those something that traditionally changes in their natural environment. And I just loved this idea. So you're paying more particular attention to the nature around you, the birds, the garden, I don't know, trucks. Maybe you have trucks coming through at certain times of the year. Maybe you have tourists leaving or students coming in. You can choose whatever to notice. I just like that humans are noticing things around them rather than looking at their phones. So it's mostly birds and nature and stuff that Lev Parikian talks about. But 5 stars. The cover did not disappoint. It's a hefty book, and I've read bits and pieces out of it. You don't need to love Britain. You don't need to know about birds. It's just like a good introduction and enticement to pay more attention to the world around you and sort of slow down and gentle yourself. He wrote this during the pandemic, so he had an extra motivation to do so, but I think it's definitely worth doing when you're out and about and working all the time anyway. So 2 enthusiastic thumbs up. Oh, and I haven't figured out if that works for a Climathon book. I will see if it does, because that would qualify. In my brain, Climathon started in January, so everything I'm reading counts, even if I don't read it with the intention. But Herkiad just started July 7th, and I was reading that before that, so that doesn't count for me. So that's book number 1. Recommend to everybody. And it's a very pretty cover. Thank you, Esther. Jim says 72 seasons. Yes, and they're all 5 days. So imagine like what happens in 5 days. I tried to start journaling my own version of this for Portland. Um, we'll see. We'll see how I do. I haven't kept up with it. Esther says, love the dog ears I saw. Yes, my little turned corners. Oh, Jocelyn is asking Climathon. Climathon is a readathon that is a year long. I'm in 2 year-long ones now. Climathon, which is run by, I think, Well Traveled Books and Roots and Refuge Farm. I think those are the names of the channels. But they have, I think, 8 or so prompts, and it's about different elements of nature and policy about climate change. And they're mostly nonfiction, but you can also read fiction for some of the prompts. And I am 4 books, maybe 3 now, away from completing it in August, which is kind of exciting. I'll be done with it early. But yeah, cause near and dear to my heart. So this is a great readathon for me. But what I was going to say after book 1 was the big update for me is that last night I finished my 30-day challenge. So if you've seen me shooting out those word counts and like banging on about having a morning session and an evening session and getting my 1,000 words on, that's done. That's done. So I was aiming to do at least 1,000 words a day. I got 33,813 and added to my slow crawl beginnings of my second draft. That means 59,315 words. So definitely like novel length, which is what I was aiming for. So now that we've rewritten the historical fantasy into a historical fiction, and I've still got little pieces of consistency to work out, and names are my first priority, consistency with names. I'm going to be going back in the next week and like taking some of those comments out and sort of streamlining before I send it to my editor so that I don't give her an immediate migraine. But that is my very exciting 30-day streak, and now I can stop because I don't like doing the same thing every day. It was hard. It was like I could feel the resistance in the last 3 days, even though I wanted to continue writing. I didn't want to keep doing the exact same thing. So it's done. It's done, which is very exciting as an update. Jim says, I notice when the swallows arrive here in April, they make me feel melancholy. I associate them with a difficult time in France. See, that would make a really interesting essay, I would think. I know what is the phrase in French? Une hirondelle ne fait pas le printemps. So I think that's about swallows. Hirondelle. One swallow doesn't make it springtime. I wonder if that's associated with it. That's from the movie Amélie, so definitely didn't study phrases. Esther says, congratulations, thank you. And I rocked it. Yes, thank you. I'm glad. I just needed like a little motivation and like here's the fenced in part and then you can graduate and do something else. So I'm glad I got through it. We're done. And now I need to like chop into the next stage, which is very exciting. Aaron does all swallows. Okay, perfect. Yay. And I think there's a similar phrase, aphorism in English, but I'm not sure if I know it. So yes, for nature books, nature memoirs, I love the genre. So I have a recommendations list specifically from nature memoirs. If that is your thing, it's on bookshop.org. So, okay. So now we're going to get into the next book, which is Scratch. Writers, Money, and the Art of Making a Living. So this is another stir all the dog ears. This is another compilation, I will say, and This is of all different writers who wrote in a short story or a short. They're very, different in tone and approach, but it's basically about writers making money and how they do it, and, like, if they went through a tough time doing this because, like many industries, it's, inappropriate to discuss, and so the author or the editor, Manjula Martin, was trying to sort of break that taboo silence and allow people to see other people's experiences. So, number 1, they don't feel so alone, or number 2, they don't feel so much like a pariah, or number 3, they just allow things to unfold the way they will rather than putting expectations on themselves to make a certain amount in advance, et cetera, et cetera. And this is containing stuff by writers you may have heard of: Cheryl Strayed, Jonathan Franzen, Jennifer Weiner, um, and I loved, almost all of them. And as with any collection of multiple writers, you're gonna get some that you connect with more than others, so that's pretty expected. Solid 4-star book. It is from 2016 or 17, so it also focuses on traditional publishing. There's, like, one that mentions self-publishing, so there's definitely, like, a choice being made, but I think the information is still valuable, and it was nice to hear about these different authors' experiences, kinda like you went to a networking event and got to hear about their, I don't know, seedy past is an overstatement, but definitely, like, behind the scenes kind of journey, which I liked. No points for guessing who I didn't enjoy reading. Just just putting that out there. Just, no points, yeah. Um Oh, interesting. I wonder if that's because the migration patterns for the swallows. One swallow doesn't make a summer. I don't have that in American. I don't have that in my American parlance, so perhaps that's because swallows go to England in the summer. I love it. See? Learning about the world. Okay, so that was book 2, Scratch, and my second update is I had a little pre-celebratory book haul. I like to do multiple stops when I take the car out for a drive to sort of justify driving somewhere, and one of the things I couldn't find within walking distance was a pair of gardening gloves to replace the ones that were ripping apart, so I had to go to the big box, not yard store, hardware store, and it's, like, 7 miles away, so there was a bookstore on the way. I couldn't help myself. And so, Spoke and Word is the fun named bookstore that I went to. I had this one on the top of my mind because it was just featured in a YouTube video that was an interview with the bookseller. Microcosm is a bookstore and publisher, and they supply the also local bookstore Spoke and Word, and so they just did an interview about what is it like opening a bookstore because they just opened, I think, a year ago-ish, and Sierra is lovely. So we got to hear about her experience opening, and I had been there for Independent Bookstore Day, so, like, I was like, "Oh, it's time to go back." That was April, it's August, so I was keeping in mind my Herkiad challenge, and I asked them, "What is a 4-book completed series that I have not yet started that I can use for Herkiad for that prompt?" And this is what the lovely Amy came up with. So You Want to Be a Wizard by Diane Duane, middle grade series, and, I'm excited because she said it's like the community-minded version of Harry Potter, and I was like, "Oh, please, yes, let's do this." So I'm very excited about that. Um, I couldn't remember if I had a copy of this or not. I may have given it away. Anyway, I picked up another one. This is Small Island by Andrea Levy, and it's about, I think, her experience as an immigrant to the UK as a Windrush generation from the Caribbean. So let's see. It's 1948. England is recovering from a war. The conflict has just begun. Queenie Bly's neighbors do not approve when she agrees to take in Jamaican lodgers. But with her husband, Bernard, not back from the war, what else can she do? So we're talking about, yes, Windrush generation, post-World War II. But it's fiction. Okay. So it's a novel that it's covering the same experiences that I thought. So very cool. Snagged that on the table outside. This as well. So Deborah Harkness, Discovery of Witches. I read the first book and loved it. I read the second book and was less enamored and didn't read the third book. This is the fourth book, and someone told me that the fourth book is redeemed. That it's just much better. And so I was like, okay. Okay. I'm a sucker. I'll go back into this world. I love it. So we'll see what this is about. I have no idea, but it's got great potential, and I loved the series earlier. And then a local author, Waypoint Kangaroo by Curtis Chen. It's a sci-fi series that's supposed to be very humorous, and I've been meaning to get a copy of his, and there we go. So I'm not sure if I will read it or whether I will gift it, but I may do both. So that is my book haul. I actually got one more book, but I'm going to have to return it because I already had it. I had another 4-book series, the Boudica series by Amanda Scott, and I guessed which one I didn't have wrong. So curses. So I'll have to go and return that one. But yes, pre-celebratory book haul. That was very exciting for me. We've got book 3 is a library book, and it's called Nicked. You can't see it because of the tag, but nicked. It's got multiple meanings. To nick something in British English is to steal it. And there's a character in here called Nicephorus. And nicked also means cut, as with a sharp object. So I think those all come into play. It's by M.T. Anderson. Oh, I've been spelling his name wrong. It's an O-N. Okay. And I saw him interviewed for the first time, saw what he looked like for the first time on A Mighty Blaze a couple weeks ago on the Thoughtful Bro podcast. And so I was like, oh my gosh, that sounds so good. It's historical fiction, but it's not in my normal time period. It is in the 11th century, and it concerns Bari, the town in Italy, and a plot that is hatched to go steal the bones of a saint that are said to be miraculous. Because one of the ways you can boost your economy if you're a little city trying to make it in the Middle Ages against plague and invaders, is to have something that makes you a pilgrimage site. So they're going to go to not Lycia, not Lydia, Myra. It's a city I don't think that any longer exists. But anyway, in Greece or Turkey, and steal the saint's bones of Saint Nicholas. So it's like very funny, very poignant. The reason I was so excited to hear M.T. Anderson on A Mighty Blaze is that I read Traitor to the Nation, Volume 1, The Pox Party, like 8 years ago, a long time ago. And it's marketed as a young adult novel because the main character is a young adult. But the main character is an enslaved boy in pre-revolutionary America in the Northeast. And so he sort of lucks out in that he has scientist masters, and so his experience is very different, but you're also presented with the same sort of poignant stuff you get in here about what is right, what is wrong, and sort of wrestling with a conscience in a time that doesn't accept the same type of right and wrong concepts that we have. And I just thought that was such a brilliant way to do it. So poignant, funny. A lot of the history, the batshit crazy history, is true, which is hilarious to me. So this just came out, and I recommend everyone picking it up for a rollicking good time. Nicked by M.T. Anderson. So that's going on my Herc Get list as well because I just picked it up. So that was book 3, and we're halfway through. Okay, so first bonus book. I don't have a picture of this one because it was from Interlibrary Loan, and it had a thing across the front, and it was a hardcover, so it was pretty boring. It was academic press, but it was called Calming the Storms, and wait for it, It's about banking history. So these are the research books that I read so you don't have to. But like it's giving me background for lots of events in my current manuscript. So I was reading to find out about why there were all these ups and downs, why they were solved, what the debate was about how to solve them, the role of gold and silver and bullion in that debate, the problems with shifting trade balances in the 1820s, 30s, 40s, the role of the famine when it came in at the end, just like lots of interesting things going on that are going to be pushing some of the action, but you're not going to see on the page. So, invisible. But thank you to the academic press and writer who did all that crazy research for me. That was great. Anita says the city of Venice stole their saintly relic back in the day. Yeah, and multiple times things were stolen, and of course there's lots of charlatanism and claiming a thing is a thing. And yeah, it's pretty crazy when you think about it now. Okay. Next I've got I put a bookmark in here that's not very effective. What can I replace it with? It's too thick. I'll just stick a receipt in there for now. Okay, so this was a buddy read, and Nicole at Noteworthy Fiction and I spent less than a week going through this. It started out really well and then sort of went downhill. So she had this on a list of books she might read, and I saw it and I was like, I have that book. We both found it used and decided to do a buddy read together. I sort of asked her to wait into August because August is Women in Translation Month, and this is a novel bookstore by Laurence Cosset. It's a Europa Editions, which is like the creme de la creme of translated literature. I love their formatting. It's very nice. And so I found this book with bookstore in the title, so my eyes immediately found it. And French translation, I was like, yes, this is my vibe. So I picked it up and had the opportunity to read it now because Nicole had talked about it. So we read it together. We didn't discuss it on a live, but I did have lots of things to say. Like I said, we both liked it at the beginning. It's basically about the conspiracy to open a bookstore that only had what the booksellers, considered great books. So no bestsellers that didn't cut it, no backfill, no other lines of little products, just great novels. And the way that they went about it was very interesting, but then it became dangerous because they became a target. And there's a bit of a conspiracy theory about who is targeting the people who on their committee decide who the best books are and what's happening really, like what's the reality. So the way it unwinds is very different from the expectation you're given with all the detail about compiling the books list, opening the bookstore. So it's sort of a strange shift. I've had a couple other books like this where you think it's one genre, and then by the end you're like, oh, that's not what it is. So it sort of has a mismatched front and back end, but interesting, and I would say very French in several of its elements. And so I was giving this a 3.75, like very well constructed, very thought provoking. I had lots of comments, and I only shared them with Nicole up to here. So like I owe her probably 20 more messages on Voxer, but it was suspended because I was working on other things. So we'll see if I get back to it. Otherwise, I may just like store that in my review and move on. But very excited to have one book under my belt for Women in Translation Month, which is exciting. I've got, I'm currently reading another woman translated book, which is Stendhal's autobiography called The Life of Henry Brulard. It's interesting. He's still like 11 and I'm like over 100 pages in. He has a lot of rambles. Anyway, so women translators are also included in Women in Translation. And what else have I got? Before the Feast, which I talked about earlier. And I think there might be one other floating around, but not to hand. So that's exciting. And if you're interested in reading translated novels, I had my favorite recommendations video, which I think is down in the description because it's still August, so I think I put it in there. So that's that. That's number 4. Then I've got this lovely book. So also a recent purchase. Book number 5 is called Shopkeeping: Stories, Advice, and Observations by Peter Miller, bookseller. And this is like very pretty. You can tell like the textured book cover and spine, whatever it's called. I found this in a stationery store when I was in Oblation for Stationery Shop Day, and it called to me. So it's actually a book about having a shop by a bookshop person in Seattle. So it's a local author. So if I wanted to, I could count this as local author section indie bookstore, but I may put that in my Herkiad challenge. But it's like he has an architecture bookstore, a design bookstore. So his advice pieces are a lot about like the heart and soul of being a shop owner, your responsibilities to your customers, how you fit in with your environment, like how you welcome people, how you make decisions about things, how you orchestrate the space and like the vibe basically. So it's not about like actual here's how you have a register and here's how you close a till. It's about like the feelings. So like a book for me. And I started reading it right away, and the strange thing was that it was making me tear up because of the similarities to being an author. So when he talks about the owner of the shop is really the heart and soul of the shop. The staff can carry out the mission and, the lip service of the owner, but if the owner is no longer involved and has lost hope, the staff can't carry it for them, and so the breath goes out of the place. And I was like, oh. So he says having a shop is like putting on a musical show every day and hoping people come. And I was like, yeah, that's what it's like self-publishing a book too. So I just really related in a vulnerable moment, and so this is why another 5-star book I would recommend to anyone who is a writer or maybe an artist and is looking for their audience and hopeful and trying to keep the faith, because that's the feeling this gives me. It's just great. So that's book 5. And then I have a reminder here, 2 reminders, WIT month, Women in Translation month. And then this reminder is writer wind downs. So if you don't know, for the month of August, I'm doing a series like I did last year with Fireside Chats, but instead of firing you up, I'm winding you down. I'm enacting this for my own good to try to like let go of some of the productivity tension during the day and get better rest and be better prepared in the morning to succeed. So weekday evenings in August, I've got lots of guests, and my next guest on the show is going to be Leo Bancroft, who hasn't been on Booktube in a while, so some of you may love to see his face and say hello, but we're going to keep it calm and like talk about wind down routines, etc. And also like what he's done with his work since we've seen him, which would be fun. So tomorrow, I believe it's 8 p.m. Pacific, so it's one of the later times in the evening, but maybe that will work for you. So Cat Paw's here. Hello. I know I read a novel bookstore and I can't remember a thing. So it starts out like a mystery. You get 3 different isolated attacks on people, and they have different names than the ones you learn are connected to the bookstore. But you learn that they're connected to the bookstore because they're on the committee. And like how are people attacking these people and calling them like book fascists when it was all secret? So then the bookstore people go to a policeman and tell the whole story. So most of it is like a story within a story, except for the beginning and the end. So it's like a weird format thing. Um, but a novel bookstore might be more than one book. It's a pretty common phrase. So I don't know. Is that the one that you read, Cat Paw? Wanda's here saying, loving the keening. Oh, that's so lovely. Thank you. Almost done. I've been stretching it out. Yeah, well, there's two more in the series if you're curious. Um, and that's very exciting. That's very nice to hear because that's a historical fiction trilogy. And I'm starting on what may be a trilogy or maybe more with the current book. Which has got similar vibes, but I'm hoping like, even better, like improving as I keep going in my writing career. Wanda says, I also received a used signed copy of Mr. Atkinson's Rum Contract. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. That's really cool. So, that's a book that I picked up in Britain. I'm pretty sure you heard about it on this channel, maybe because I thought it was so great. And then you found a copy, which is fantastic. I am currently reading a book called Sugar in the Blood, which is a similar treatment of like looking at Britain's relationship with the West Indies, as they were known in the time, the Caribbean islands that were part of the British Empire. And instead of Atkinson now looking back to his family in like the 1770s or 60s, this one is Andrea Stewart now looking back at her, I think 17th century, so even earlier. And instead of Jamaica, it was Barbados. So I'm getting a little bit of like more Caribbean flavor and history sprinkled in, which is so fascinating. And the naming is crazy. But yeah, the history of the era is something we don't learn in America, and it's like we missed out big time. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you like the like family history sleuthing because that's the fun part. Yes. um I reviewed it and I can put the review as a comment after we finish so it's easier for you to find because I can find it pretty easy. Earlier this year. It was a good one. It was a good one. So I think we're ready for the final book. Yes. Final book is an audio book. So I've got an overlay. Oh, and Wanda says, yes, because of you. Really interested in the history because I found a Puerto Rican in my Northwest English ancestry. Whoa. Oh my gosh, so many questions. Like you did a blood test type and they analyzed it. Or like you did family research on a tree and like someone is somehow like listed as coming from Puerto Rico. That's so cool. Like what's the history? What's the context, right? That's really exciting to try to find out. I wonder how far back it is and if like people know or there's family stories handed down. That'd be fun. Okay, so this is whoops, comments. There we go. Put that down so you can see. This is book 6, and it's Dira Yawada by Anita Heiss. And that's the best I can pronounce it. I have been practicing. I did really love hearing the words in the Aboriginal language. And of course, I got used to the rhythms, but now, like a day later, I'm the bit. So this is a book set in Australia, set in the 1820s, set in the time of the initial conquest of the inland areas. And so we have settlers coming in who are British citizens, let's just say. And then we also have convicts who are the forced labor to settle these areas. And by settle, I mean invade and cultivate and do animal husbandry on, right? And so we have in this novel the representation of one family that are Irish settlers and one man who is an Irish convict, Irish Republican. So they have that in common. They were both for Irish freedom, but they lost. And The third twine in the weave is, your Uradre. Rodri. I kept hearing it as Uradre, but there's a lot of letters in there that don't make sense with that pronunciation, but that's how I heard it from the narrator. And so that's what I'll repeat. I did look it up and see that there are lots of different letters. And so that sort of made me go, oh, well, how do I say this now? So I'm going to say it the way I heard it because that seems right. And so this Aboriginal woman who was friendly with the Irish settlers and lived with them at their place and worked for them. And they had good relations with the Aboriginal inhabitants, the Wiradre people, but they were the only ones. And so you see it sort of take over the period of a year, 2 years, 3 years. And it's, I think, categorized as a romance, but I wouldn't call it a romance. I would say it's definitely historical fiction, and it dives pretty deeply into colonial history. You get a really good um, context or background or primer, whatever word you want to use, on one Aboriginal clan or tribe. Because the main character, the woman who lives with the Irish settlers, um, talks to her brother fairly frequently, and he is an Uradre warrior, and he's going all these different places, having to take a stand, trying to get his message across to people, trying to help his people survive. And so you've got that building up against like the British military at the end. So that was a really interesting point in history to attack. And what's interesting for me with this choice of book and why I like snapped it up right away to listen to, got forwarded in the queue, is that so this is happening in the 1820s in Australia. There's Irish settlers and convicts who have been kicked out, transported from Ireland. And I'm working on a book where there was a failed revolution in Ireland. And so there was a family that had to emigrate. And how did they survive? They got split up. Where are they living? What are they dealing with now, 20 years later? How did they choose to live their lives? And so I'm choosing to do that in the Glasgow area because I know it better and I've never been to Australia. So obviously I wouldn't be able to talk about this there. But yeah, it's the same time, it's similar issues, it's similar generational traumas you'll manifesting in different ways. And so I just thought that was so interesting to read about and get corroborated or, just feel like someone else is on the same wavelength. So that was pretty exciting for me. Okay, so one is talking about her family. I have two Archbishop of York, one generation apart. Archbishop of York, one generation apart. I'm not sure what that means. Like you're related to two archbishops? That's cool. I have DNA going way back and ancestors. Puerto Rico shows up in the 16th century. So is it like Taino? Because isn't that the indigenous tribe name in the area before they were like decimated by the Spaniards and then like replaced by African slaves? Because wow, that's so cool. Oh my gosh. Okay. Do you have a blog? Can you tell us like where you're working this out so we can follow the history? Because this is like fascinating saga. I want to know what you find out. Um, so that is book 6. Do I have one more update? I do. So let me take this down. Brand comments. We got a Barrett in the house. Hello, Barrett. Hey, peeps. And then Wanda tells us Matthew Hutton buried in York Cathedral. His correspondence from Dr. Matthew Hutton. Oh, that's where you found evidence? In correspondence. No, you said DNA. Okay. I need a blog post about this at the very least. That's very exciting. Okay, so we've gotten through 6 books and 5 updates reminders. So let me get to the last bonus, which is the bonus book. And again, not a picture for this one, but for Herkyed, which is a reading challenge that goes a year long, starting on July 7th until next July 6th, run by Q Wordy. one of the prompts is to read a webtoon or webcomic that is finished all the way through. And you know what? I didn't know what that was. I read comics, I read them on Instagram, I read them on Patreon, but what's a webtoon? So here's what I found, ladies and gentlemen. There's this site, there's two main sites, webtoon and webcomic, I believe. That Stephanie of the Q Wordy channel pointed us to. And that's really not big enough. How about that? I found this one, which seemed also right up my alley for Climathon, and it was called Rewriting Extinction. And basically, what it was is a bunch of cartoons. Some were multiple panels, some were very few. And it's people pointing out truths about extinction, the sixth extinction that we're living through of all these species disappearing um, in often funny ways and sometimes sad ways. But I also got caught up in another comic that was like make you cry because it's called, I can't remember what it's called. It's something about like death being a friend. And it's the one, if you've seen it on Instagram, where Death, the executioner with the hood and the sickle, ends up being a cat person. And so the cat that dies is now his little emissary to like welcome people to the afterlife. And it's all like the cycle, the beautiful cycle of life and death. And oh man, the animal deaths are handled very tenderly. There's just lots of tears any way you slice it. So I'm excited to see like the new format of webtoons and webcomics. I don't think I'll like take it up regularly anytime soon, but I'm excited to know another form, which is just cool, just expanding my horizons. Just like on Friday's writer Wind Down with Elaine Canyon, she was promoting a book that was a lit RPG book, and I'd never heard of that. So we went into that in detail, and she was telling me about what this one book, something about hell, running to hell, evil. I ran away to evil. I can't remember the name anymore, but we got to know like another type of format that was just a creative outlet for people. So it was really cool. So yeah, so that is my last update. I'm just trucking along with Herkyed and books, obviously. That's my 6 books plus 2 bonus for today. And just a reminder, Writer Wind Downs start up again tomorrow, Monday, and Leo Bancroft will be my guest at 8 p.m. Pacific. So if you're interested in like doing a little wind down and deep breathing and planning for the next day to set yourself up for success. And I like modulate my voice so it's lower and slower and soothing, hopefully. So I'm not as high energy. But that is the name of the game. That is the aim of the game. So hopefully you can join me for those. Otherwise, I will see you the rest of the week for Writer Wind Downs or right back here for my anniversary stream. No, it won't be steamy. Anniversary stream on August 18th. And yeah, stay tuned for what will be involved because I don't have all the pieces together yet. I've got pieces of the giveaways. I got some of the guests, but not everything has come together yet. So, but it will be Sunday at my regular time, August 18th. So hope to see you there and celebrate 4 years on Booktube. Oh, thank you, Anita. I ran away to evil. I was there. I just didn't have it solid. So thank you. No. Yeah. So 22 stars among 6 books. That's pretty darn good for the last 2 weeks of reading. I hope your reading has been good as well. What are you reading now? I am reading The Sugar in the Blood, which is the Caribbean history, a little earlier than I needed, but I just passed the part in the book where they're talking about the 1830s and abolition, and it's like a blip. It's like 3 pages. So it's this big old book, and it's like 3 pages about the time period that I was looking for, which is fine. It's pretty interesting. It's not as personal Richard Atkinson's is much more like, "This is my childhood, and this is where I grew up, and this is how I found out about this, and this is how I stumbled across this cookbook, and this led me into this," and more of like a sleuthing adventure, whereas this one I feel is more like, The Warmth of Other Suns, like someone who's much more professionally distanced and going over stuff that is to do with her family, but having researched it, in a more uh, cut and dried way. Not to make a sugarcane pun there, but I guess it was there. Okay, so Jim is saying I'm reading Black Leopard Red Wolf by Marlon James. That's the big long one. And Fragile Threads of Power by V.E. Schwab. Tell me if Fragile Threads of Power is related to Darker Shade of Magic. Because I just saw it in Spoken Word, the bookstore I was in yesterday, and I couldn't tell. I mean, the branding's different, so I couldn't tell, but it sounds like it with the title. That would be pretty exciting, and I can't remember from when it came out. I think it is. I think it's another point of view, right? I love V.E. Schwab. Oh, okay. It is. It's the 4th book set in Darker Shades of Magic series. Well, that's lovely. So I should put that on my list because I loved that series. I can't use it for the challenge because it has to be a series that you haven't started that yet, that you start and finish. So that's out. Ooh. Oh, Barrett, that's great title. No Cure for Being Human is my current read. It sounds like a nonfiction, but I have no idea. I haven't heard this before. It sounds like it might be funny, which is always good. Jim says Delilah Bard and Kel Maresh are back. Yes. They're just truly badass. What can I say? Anita says, I'm reading an arc of The Chaos Clock, a short story collection of steampunk Lovecraftian inspired tales. That's very cool. I was just listening to Gem of Books talk about Ministry of Time. There were varying opinions on that, which is, you said Chaos Clock, I think of time travel. So Ministry of Time came up, but steampunk tales. That's cool. And Jim says it's over 600 pages. Oh, Fragile Threads of Power is that long? Does not look that long. It does not look like it's thicker than Black Leopard Red Wolf. Kate Bowler Nonfiction. I don't know Kate Bowler either. Okay. So No Cure for Being Human, subtitle, Other Truths I Need to Hear. Oh, well, it sounds like she has a sense of humor about her own situation, perhaps. I hope it's good. Barrett says, so far, pretty good, but only about 6 or so chapters in. Oh, excellent. And Anita says there's some time travel involved too. Yeah, steampunk. Throw some time travel in there. Why not? They're good. They're good with each other, I think. So yeah, I've had some 5-star reads. It's been very enjoyable in the last couple weeks. I hope when you guys finish your books, they're just as awesome. And yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there. Thanks for coming to watch on this Sunday morning. I hope you're doing fab. I hope you're taking care of yourself and enjoying your current reads. And I don't know if you want to join the hardest reading challenge you've ever done. Come to the dark side. We'll see you again soon. Thanks, everybody. Bye.